This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
Okay, there's really no secret to this, but if you already know about Tokai guitars, I just picked this one up. I very briefly kind of picked it up, had a play with it. This belongs to Andy, who lent me the what's the name? The Harlot, the Kingsley Harlot, and I was just dropping that back to him, and he was like, "Check out this guitar. Would you check out this Tele?" And he was wondering how it stacked up against like the Nacho, or even like the cheaper end, the Artist. And I have to say that I'm absolutely blown away by this guitar. So I just wanted to do another video on it because these things pop up from time to time. And I've had a Tokai Strat from about 1984, I think it was. And I just think there's something really beautiful about them. What I like best about these guitars really is this pretty unpretentious just an unpretentious poly, not too flash Tele, and it doesn't have the correct ashtray bridge. I don't know if that's a terrible thing. It actually intonates really well. It plays really well. I think it sounds like a Tele still. So that is like the most non-traditional part of it. This poly finish is fairly transparent still, so I don't think it's one of those really thick poly finish type things, and there is some wear to it anyway. Yeah, what I like about it is that these are relatively affordable, like when they come up sort of under £1,000, so the sort of money that you might pay for like a Fender Vintera. And it kind of is a guitar which, because it's like an early 80s guitar, kind of has that thing that so many of these relic guitars and all of this sort of industry is designed around sort of replicating, in that it is an old now guitar made with old wood that has had potentially, you know, thousands of hours of play on it, rather than just someone tinkering around with sort of tools in, you know, a workshop somewhere, whether that's a big factory or whether that's boutique. In any case, there is something to like a genuinely old piece of gear, I think, anyway. And the things about, you know, like wood at this time would have been slightly different. Like, they weren't making as many guitars as they are these days. So it would have been, you'd think, older growth, presumably, right? And it would have been, you know, trees that kind of grew up with a different atmosphere to now. That's another thing I've read about it. These are creamery pickups. One of the things that I've read about Tokai guitars is that those pickups were not super well regarded. It's not the easiest playing guitar, but in some ways it is. So this is set up with 9.5s, which I'm really tempted to try on some of my tellies. Like, no guitar is in and of itself absolutely just like 100% magical or anything. And the other thing to bear in mind is that this is just my opinion on this. It's just one example of this is, I think, the first Tokai telly that I've ever played. I love the 7.25 inch radius. There are some downsides with that. If you're really into bends, then you're going to have this fretting out issue, unless you were to change something drastic about the setup. I love the feel of the neck. This is like it feels somewhat like a 60s Strat type neck, in that it's a little bit slimmer here and then gets a bit fuller up here, but just a lovely, lovely feeling thing. A little bit of wear on the neck, but not tons, so I wouldn't say this has been played necessarily as much as some guitars that I've seen, like a little bit of cowboy chord kind of wear, but an absolutely fantastic guitar under £7. So it's really put Tokai back on the map for me in terms of, you know, if I was looking for a telly still you know, I would absolutely not dismiss a Tokai just because it has a poly finish. I think everything else about this guitar is absolutely fantastic, and to be able to get, you know, a 40-year-old guitar for under £1,000 that is actually respectable. I think Greco makes them, and Fujigen as well. So you can catch these Japanese vintage things, which are from an era where really I think Fender had kind of fallen off considerably and weren't making guitars. So if you were to buy like a Dan Smith era Tele or Strat from around then, these would be like £5,000 pieces of gear if you can find them. These are still very reasonably priced. I just seen there was one online for £7 and 8 ounces, closer to the 8, but £7 and 9, I think. So the weight is going to vary on these, but if you can find one that suits you, I think you get a ton of guitar for your money. Let me know if you're hip to the Tokai thing or not, or other Japanese brands that maybe are not as well known. Let people know in the comments. Cheers for stopping by.